Okay, everyone's saying we're good to go again. Excellent. All right, I will officially start over. Okay. So, welcome to Worldpainter. When you launch the program, you should see a screen like this. It's just a default world. It may give you options to change things here when you want to create a new one. This is the one it does for me. If you see something different on your screen, it's totally fine. We're going to get rid of everything. And how we're going to do that is the first step you want to do on these maps is you want to take the spray can here and you want to go down to the terrain tab and select grass. And make it very large. And we want to make everything on this map grass. In fact, over on the right-hand side here, you're going to be using this menu quite a lot to adjust the intensity of the brush here. We want it to be 100% so we can get all of this gone. The next thing we're going to want to do is make everything water. If some of you can't hear me, you'll have to turn up the volume on your end. This is about as loud as I can talk, unfortunately. So the next thing we want to do is pretty much flatten the entire map. And that's going to be done with this tool up here. However, we want to flatten it to a depth that we can use. And since we know we're going to be making a survival island, we want to have this be all water to a depth of about, I think we want probably what, Y40? And this isn't going to be quite good enough for that, but we will get rid of all the grass that way. And we will want to choose this tool right beside it, the height, to lower the terrain. And the brush I'm using for this is my favorite brush. It's this one in the top right-hand corner, because it's got a pattern to it. And it's very seldom that you'll want to use another brush than this, actually. When I was building Norath, this is pretty much the brush I used to create the sea, the mountains, pretty much everything. All right. Now we need to check the info tab here. It's right underneath the brush settings. If you click on it and start moving your cursor over the map, you'll see things start to change, all the numbers and everything. And it'll tell you exactly what the block state is down to an individual block. In other words, let me zoom in on this. You can see an individual block, and it'll tell you the height, what it is, what the terrain is, what the layers you've added to it, and everything. So if you can't tell from the bottom bar at the left here, it also displays most of this information. But if you ever need detailed information, be sure you click on the info tab here, because most of the time you don't see this. And it took me a while to figure out that this was actually here. So. But now that we've lowered this down some to about, probably about what we want the ocean floor to be around here. Let's see. It's in about the 30s or 40s. This is going to be good. We want to now select, what is it? We want to go the other way and start making the island. Okay, everybody's good? So we now want to erase the terrain, and you do this with your mouse buttons. And we just want to get a shape that we like. This is the part of the phase where you could call this like kneading the dough if you're making a loaf of bread or something. You just want to get a nice shape going. And most of this is down to how you want to look at it. Like, if you have a pencil and paper, you can sketch some shapes for islands that you like or various terrains. You can also do this in MS Paint or any other program. And Worldpainter has a setting for you to actually import that map. And I think we are going to want to have probably a central mountain on this. We're definitely going to want to have an inland body of water and several offshore islands, I think. Most of this involves playing around with this brush here to sort of nudge and sculpt the terrain until you see something that you like. Isn't too bad. Let's turn up the intensity of the brush here and get it done a little quicker. Now, when you're using the intensities on the brush, be careful when you set this to high 100% levels because it can move very fast. But if you do something that you don't like, there is a Control Z. You can undo what you previously did, and you can Control Y to get it back. So don't be afraid to test out various things that you want to try out. And if they don't work, you can just undo them and try out something else. Perhaps an island like this. I think we'll have a central island with a couple of others off this way, a couple of smaller ones. And if you use the mouse wheel, you can adjust the size of the brush and it will give you a different level of texture on it. But when you're doing this phase, you don't really have to worry about that. You just want to play around with the terrain until you see something that you like. Okay, making pretty mountains is actually going to be the last part of this because what you need to do with this is I recommend that you build your worlds from the bottom up. And I just use the zoom in and out function here, by the way. These little buttons up here. You can get in really close on this stuff if you want to, but you generally don't need to. And also, before we get going, there's another thing we want to use. If you use the View menu up here and come down here, you're going to see a thing that says Show 3D View. And if you click on that and expand the window here, this gives you a three-dimensional view, a sort of orthogonal view of everything we've just done. In other words, when you're building your worlds, you don't have to rely on this top-down view all the time. You can make a change here and go over and look at it like this. If you have two monitors, you can put this up on the other screen and you can see it change in real time while you're doing it. So I think this shape is good enough to get started with. What we're going to want to do now is do a little work on the ocean before we get too far along with that. And you want to give your ocean floors a little texture to them. So I'm taking the same brush that I've been using the whole time. I haven't changed it. I've just made it smaller. It was a radius of what, 100 and something. But if you look down at the very bottom center, you should see a radius, and it's going to tell you how big your brush is. Because sometimes this black is you can easily lose how big it is inside the map here. So you can use your your mouse wheel to adjust the size, and you can see the radius down at the bottom. It's telling you how big it is. So we want to go down to a radius of about 50 and go through the ocean floor here and just add some texture to it. Because remember, we're starting this from the bottom up, and it's going to be a lot easier, in my experience, to get your ocean set down first. Because if you want to change that later, it's going to cause problems. And you can go down as deep as you want to with this. I think that already goes down to bedrock, so it's a little too low. But you can make them as deep or shallow as you like. And you can also just hold it down and drag it around here and give everything a little texture. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do after we do this is start on the seashore. And for that, we're going to want to not use the raise and lower the terrain tool over here. We need this flatten one. And we select the flatten one. We leave the brush the same, but we want to change the intensity down really low, because if you leave it up this high, it's just going to make a mess. You want to turn it down to about 2/3, somewhere in the 20 to 30% range. 29% is my favorite. And you'll just want to adjust your brush to the appropriate size and start tracing the edges here. And go along it this way, like so. Now, be careful where the center of your brush is. You see the little crosshairs off to the side here, below the pyramid? It's going to take that height that your brush is at here, and that's going to be the height that it flattens at. Because if you do this in the ocean down here, you can see it's starting to flatten the ocean, and that's not the level we want to do it at. The easiest way to do this without having to look at any of the numbers is just to position your crosshairs over the transition where the water and the land meet, and just drag it around the perimeter here. And it's going to give us the level we want to go for the beaches. And let's slip over to the 3D view. We can see what we've done so far. You can see we just started to flatten along the edges here. And we will continue doing that around the island. Like so. And don't worry if the edges look messy. This isn't the final shore. We're still roughing it out. We want to get everything in position. And the next thing we can start roughing out is what the terrain is going to be for our mountain. So for that, the easiest way to make good looking mountains without having to use dedicated brushes to do it is to use this same flatten tool. Just a second. Is to use this same flatten tool, but leave it on the same intensity you used for the beaches, and start with your cursor near the beach and drag it inland, like this. See what that's doing? It's starting to create some terrain variation in our hills here, because they're all soft and sort of, nondescript over here. But if we drag it off of the beaches, it starts making this pattern, because it's taking the height that we have for the beaches and it's applying it to the area where the hills are. But because our intensity is only set at 29% over here, it's not doing it immediately. I'll turn that up and show you what that looks like if we did it that way. See? If we did it that way, it makes it very sharp over here, but it makes it too flat over here. And we want to get a nice transition to have some foothills into our mountains. So we will turn our brush intensity back down to 29%. Position our crosshairs near the beach and just ever so gently and slowly drag it in. Now, some of this is going to take a lot of practice to get right. That's what it took for me. And you can do this easily by just checking what you've done on your 3D view. Like if you want to keep a central peak here on the top of the mountain, or if you want to divide it, you can drag the brush clean across the mountain. And now we have two over here, but that doesn't look really good. So we want to undo that and ever so gently drag our cursor across the hills here again. And we'll take a look at that there. See, that looks a lot better. And on this, by the way, there's buttons up here. You can also rotate the view to take a look at the other side of your island if you're working on mountains around the back and you want to know what they look like. And it'll show you this from any of the 4 directions. And this phase that I'm talking about with the mountains, with this particular brush, is probably going to end up being the primary brush that I would suggest that you really learn how to use. This is a brush that you want to learn sort of mastery over, because you can use this not only on your mountains to make the mountains, but you can extend your beaches this way also. And we want to have a nice little beach off this way, so we can have a little inland cove here to sail into. Who knows, we might want to build our base by this. And this brush, I think we're at a radius of 57, so we want to use our mouse wheel and go down to about 40 or so. And this is going to make ever finer changes, because to get your maps in the shape that you're going to want them in, you're going to have to end up using smaller and smaller brushes. You can use the same brush if you want to, but you need to use smaller sizes in order to get the detail. Like, I'll show you how that works. Like, we have this little hill down here. It's very, well, there's nothing to it. Very smooth. So we want to do the same thing we did with our mountains on this hill here, but drag our brush in. and you want to look at it and sort of get a shape that you might like. You'll figure this out from experience. The more you do this, the easier it is to tell what's going to look good without having to constantly check your 3D file. But now that we've done that, we have too much flat land around here, which is good for the moment because we can use this to make our beaches look better. Because the shore of the islands here is very sort of linear. And by that I mean it's not broken up by anything. And this is what you want to do to make your beaches look good. Transition over to that for a moment. I'll do some work on this area. So we're going to lower the radius of our brush down to about 24 now. Remember, we're using smaller brushes to get finer detail. And one of the things I've found useful is to just sort of start pushing the water in a little bit. And you can see how that's going to look. And you can also push it back out if you didn't like how it came out. But you can use this to make all sorts of interesting features, because the key to making a coast that's like this, that's very straight, look good, is you want to just push the water in over here. Maybe push it in a little bit over here. And push the land out some. In other words, if it looks straight, just make it not look straight. Because natural terrain is sort of rugged. And you want to make your terrain look like that also. So see, that's looking better. But this area is there's still too much there. There's not enough of this hill here. So we need to add some more terrain. And to do that, we will go back to our height. The height tool, we will keep the brush settings the same. And we will just rake it over this area. Actually, we will turn up the intensity on this bit. Get it done a little quicker. And when you're doing this, it's okay to put too much down. Like that. That is too much. But it's going to be enough for our purposes, because when we go back to the flatten tool, turn the intensity back down, keep the brush the same, we can do what we did on our island, on our mountains again, and just drag the brush into it. Like this. And when we go back to look at it, see, that looks a lot better than what we just had it before. The hill over here was too small. We made it larger by dumping a bunch of terrain down there. Think of it like a lump of Play-Doh. And now we sculpted it into the shape that we want. So. Okay. And I think that looks pretty good for this section of the island. Now we need some smaller islands. Think of these as adding sort of sandbars, and you can do this by just dragging the terrain off into the ocean more than you want. And then you put your crosshairs in the ocean, in a shallow part of the ocean, and just drag it across. So now we've made a little offshore island. But the shape of the island doesn't look very good, because remember, this is, think How do I explain this? Think like fluid dynamics, if that makes sense to you. How water flows. Because if this is in the ocean, we're going to have the water is going to want to smooth these areas out and fill in other areas. Kind of like when harbors naturally silt up and everything. You want to make your coastlines look like they've been exposed to the ocean and water erosion for quite some time. Except there's no automatic erosion tool in here. This is something you have to do yourself. And the more you do it, the easier it is to make these shapes and figure out what's going to work. Because we have a little channel over here that separates the island and a little cove down from that. And you can make it all sorts of irregular sizes. That doesn't quite look good. Let's smooth this in a bit more. Make it like this. And you can also just have a little narrow channel that cuts into it. Like that. See? So the next thing you have to do is apply that sort of technique to the rest of your island. And let's see, what would be good to show you next? I think over here we can have a little inland pool. So we'll just drag our brush over here, across the water, like that. Now we can see our little freshwater lake. But from here, we want to make a little stream. And to do that, we will still use the flatten tool, but we will use a different brush for that. We'll use this one over here, one of the circles. Any of the circles will do. And you want to make it rather small. We want to go down to a radius of about 5 on this. And just put your crosshairs in the water and drag it like this. And you may have to hold down and do it for a while. There are a couple of steps involved in doing this. So there we have a little river channel that connects to our larger body of water here. But the banks on this, I don't know if you can tell or not, the resolution in the preview isn't that good. But the banks on this are going to be too high. We want it to be smoother than that. So we're going to use this tool over here, which is the smooth tool. We're going to click on that. We're going to leave the brush and the intensity the same. And we're just going to drag it across here. Now that fills in our water, but it also smooths out the contour lines around here. So we go back to the flatten tool. Drag it across the water again. And now everything here looks smoother. But the channel is a bit too big. So this is where you use your very small brushes on this. We want to go down to a radius of probably about 3. And then we will just slowly fill in the outline of the stream here. Because we want it to be a small stream. Because it's a small lake, it shouldn't have a large river coming from it. And there we go. And now we will go back to our previous brush that we've been using this whole time. Increase the radius of our brush again, leave the intensity the same. And go back along and smooth out the beaches here. And a lot of the terrain work you're probably going to be doing is, I mean, if you make something you're not happy with, like let's say this little area right here where the cursor is in the middle of the screen. I'm not happy with this area. All you need to do is just keep moving your cursor around on it until you see a shape that you like. Because I think it needs to be more filled in down here. And let's nudge this stuff around some more. And I think we could benefit from another offshore island around here. Where would we want to put that? Probably over here. Let's break out some terrain. Lower our brush size a little. And just start sculpting and pushing the grass around until we see a shape that we like. Well, let's take a look at that. It doesn't look too bad. We have more interest down here in this terrain. We now have an island down here if we want to go and build something on it. And I think we need some more mountains on this flat island over here. It's a good shape, but it needs some verticality to it. So we want to make more mountains, and that means we go back to our height tool. We keep the brush the same, upgrade the intensity, and take it back probably to about 55 in radius, and just click and hold and drag around here. Remember, we want to put down too much terrain so we can chisel away at it and sculpt it into what we want. That's probably too much, which means that we go back to our flatten tool, lower the brush intensity, lower the radius again to about half what it was before, and start our cursor, our crosshairs along the beach, and just sort of rake it in. And when you're doing the mountains, don't, a key to making your mountains look good is to do indents in them like this. You don't want to go along your mountain and do the same brush all the way along the side like that. You want to sculpt these like we sculpted this little island down here in the water a minute ago. And you want to stop your brush when you're doing this just short of where you think the mountain peak should be. So see, making some little indentations here in our mountain. And just do this randomly, don't think about it too much. Like that. Check what we've done over here. See, that's looking better. And just nudge the terrain around until you're happy with something you see. And also use you always want to have the contour lines on, the black lines you see on the map here, to help you judge the height of everything that's around you. And let's get that on the side here. See, those don't look too bad. We've got a nice little ring of mountains that's starting to take shape here around our central lake. Perhaps this island in the distant past was a volcano, and this is now the collapsed crater. Who knows? But with that done, we now need to come in here and adjust the beach line again. And we just want to do the same thing, follow around the little indentations that we made. And just break up the shoreline with various things. Take a look at that. Can do better around here. This looks a little bit too smooth. So we want to give that a little extra attention with our cursor. And as you get more experience with doing this, you'll immediately spot the areas like that you can tell that are too smooth. Like this area over here, it needs a little bit more texture to it. So we'll go back and just rake our cursor over a little bit more. See? It's got some more topography to it. And this area can also use a little bit. Like that. And there we are. And let's see, how long is it? About halfway through. I think at the speed I move with this, we're probably not going to get to the entire island this way. But this demonstrates all the terrain sculpting techniques pretty much that I use to create my North map. And pretty much any map you use, like these, like the southern half of this is pretty much done as far as terrain goes. Everything looks nice. It's properly sculpted. You can go around and add a little more variation if you want to. And I think we will do just a little work on the central mountain here, because if you look at this southern mountain down here and this one looks softer. In other words, this one has sharper features. And it has that because we've used a smaller brush for details on this. For this one, I think we were using a 50. But now we want to change the brush radius down to 25 again. And just do the same technique. Just go through, rake it over the terrain. And we can rake it over it in some places. And just sort of start pushing it in various places. We'll push it in over here. Do the same thing over here. And around here. And it's starting to take shape and get some more sharp features on it. So we'll rake it in here. Put in a bit more there. And do it around the sides. Like so. take a look at that. See how when you nudge it in like this on the sides here and make these smaller indents lower down, it gives you the effect of creating these foothills here. And if you do these with a little bit more thought to it, like let's push one up in here and one like that, you can get your mountains looking more natural, like they, how do I explain, sort of like they have tentacles that sink into the land here, where they sort of grab onto it. And that's a pretty good tip, I think, for making realistic looking mountains. Most of this is practice, really. I've been hand sculpting this for quite a long time now. But the more you do it, the more you will get an eye for it. And this is a little bit too flat, so let's move that in a little bit. And anyway, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. I mean, that's like with anything in life, really. If you want to make great mountains, you have to make a lot of bad mountains, and eventually they will start looking really good. Yeah. Go. Now, I think for the purposes of the lesson, we're not going to have time to do me hand sculpting this mountain up here at the top, so we're going to focus on fixing this up down here. Whoops, wrong screen. And the next thing that you need to know is how to use a spray can. And you to do terrain. And we want to probably add, I think, beaches would be the next thing we want to have at around water level. I think this does have a built-in beach thing on it somewhere. Yes, down here at the bottom, it's got this pre-built beach terrain that you can select. So if we select that and just randomly put it down on a spray can, it makes this pattern like this. But that is too much. We look at it in the 3D, we don't want that much beach. That looks really bad. So we want to undo that, and we really only want our beaches near the water level, right? And it'll be easier if I show you this with just plain sand, so we'll change the terrain here. And now for this, the next thing you want to use over here are your brush settings. Brush settings are going to be very important to get the finishing details on your terrain, because while this all looks nice, it's all just plain grass. And we want to have rocky mountains and snow-covered beaches and snow-covered mountains and sand-covered beaches. So to do the beach level first, we know that the map has set the water level on this around 61 or 62. So over here, you're going to see some selection that you want to click on. Click on at or above and at or below. And I'll just show you what these do in sequence. Let's click on at or above. Let's type in 100. And let's just look and see what it does. Well, it put in the sand we want, but it put it on the top of our mountain. Because the line here, this is Y level 100 in the map. So when it says at or above 100, that's what this does. So we want to undo that. We want this to be at or above, what's the water level here? It's at 61, so we want to go down to about 57, I think. So we put at or below 50, oops, nope. I mean at or below 57, wrong box. At or below 57, we'll move it, and we will have the sand go down here. But we didn't see anything that happened, which means we need to remove the water. It did put it down there, but this is what this sponge section over here does, this tool. If you click on it and click on the water, it removes the water. So you can see what we've just done below the water. So we have sand going down that far, but that's a little too far. So we want to go probably about 64. Okay, that inverted what I wanted to do. I want to do 7 and 64 here. There we go. And now we have some beaches coming in, but that's too much sand. That goes up way too high. So instead of 64, we want it to be 63. And it's putting it in a level lower than it was previously. That doesn't look too bad. And now that you've seen what the tool does, we will change the terrain down here to the beach setting instead of the sand and put it back in where we had it before. And it will only add it in certain sections. Now I can undo this again and show you. If you only want to have the sand barrier occur around the ocean, which is what I recommend, we would want it to be like that. But we don't really want to have it in our inland lake here. That doesn't quite look too good because it's going to be a freshwater lake, remember? So we want to have it be grass. Like that. And also, if we want to paint something on our ocean floor, let's say we want to, that's just all going to be plain grass, which is what we set it for when we started. So we want to change that to some sort of terrain. Now, to do this, the next thing I want to show you is adding a custom terrain. This is going to be important. This is something you really want to learn how to do, and I'm going to show you. So on this terrain tab, down here at the lower right-hand corner of it, we see a crosshair. If you hover on it, it'll say add a new custom terrain. So you want to click on that, and you can either create a custom material or you can import them from somewhere else. I'll import them later. I'll show you how to set up one first. So let's say for this one, we want to have a transition zone between the beaches and the shore. Because right now we just have, it's just a straight line at that Y level between the grass and the sand. And we can make that look a little bit more variegated. And how we will do that is by adding a custom terrain. You're going to want to click on this, not simple, you're going to want to click on this complex tab here. And down here, you're going to want to add materials. Now, what material do we want to add? Well, what would look good for our beaches is probably going to be some, not some dirt. We can add in some, I went too fast on that. If you click on the dirt here, and we want to add more than probably 4 materials. If you click on these in sequence, this window will come up. And it'll give you a drop-down menu here for the block ID, and it gives you a list of everything. Most of those you're not going to end up using. For this, we will use, I think, what have I used before? Well, we want it to be a transition zone between sand and grass. So we're going to want to add some sand. We'll scroll down, we have sand here. And you can see it updates here on the side. And you can play around with this setting up here between noise and blobs and see how it looks. We're just going to go with, I actually like blobs the most. And hang on just 2 minutes, please. I need to fix something. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So we had selected our sand, and we have some dirt here also, but dirt will just turn back to grass. So we want to use this box on the right hand here that says data value. And if you click on this and look at the box above dirt, it's kind of hard to see, but it says just plain dirt. But when you click on this, it will cycle through coarse dirt or podzol. And we want to choose, I think, a little bit of coarse dirt for that. The next material we want is going to be grass. And after that, I think we should also have a little bit of mossy cobblestone, which is going to be around here somewhere. Yes, number 48, mossy cobblestone. There we go. And you can see it's sort of giving you a rough idea what the terrain is going to look like in the preview menu over here. And for these, you can select what the occurrence is. How do I explain this? This is just something you need to play around with. Like if we increase sand to something silly like 55, we can see that it's changed the menu over here. It's also changed dirt too. See, now we have mostly sand. But if you want mostly something else, mostly mossy cobblestone, you can change that to some large number. And it will change the terrain like that accordingly. So we'll change everything back to 3 for the moment. And you can name this, by the way. So we want to have this be, we'll name it beach transition. And that gives us a whole new tab down here called custom terrain. And we can select on the terrain we just used and paint it around and see what it looks like. It kind of looks like a mess when you use it all like that. But we only want to use this, remember, on one level. And we want to use it precisely on level 64. So we come over here to at or above and out or below again. Set them both to 64. And when you do that, it will only paint it on 64, like so. And this starts to give us a transition zone. You can see here, it along this edge here. You can see how we have some more shape to it. And you shouldn't paint it everywhere like that. This is going to depend on, pretty much this is another thing you'll have to learn how to eyeball and see how it's going to look good. Because these high contrast terrains like that, you only want to have them around these edges here, like that. So for the next thing, I should see if I can import all of my previous terrains from my Norath world that I've done. I'm not sure how long that's going to take to load. All right. So it's going to give you a box. If you have a world that you've made these terrains in before, you only have to make them once. Just keep that world. And this shows you a list of all the terrains I've made before. And I'll just import them all in, and it brings them all in here. And the next one I want to show you how to use on this is another important feature of the brush over here, which I haven't talked about. It's going to be down here where it has this menu for above or below, and it has a degree setting. This is going to be key to making these mountains look good. And that's what I want to show you how to do now. So for that, we will choose gray mountain. Well, maybe let's actually choose red mountain rock. That'll show up better. And we'll choose our spray can again. And we will rake it over our mountains here. Now I've selected above 45 degrees down here on this brush to do this. And what that's done is all the blocks that are above 45 degrees, however it calculates that from one block to another. In other words, all of these blocks down here by the beach are going to be below 45 degrees because when they're I need to use MS Paint to explain this. Okay. And the reason I'm using MS Paint is because we have these handy blocks here that approximate Minecraft blocks. So we have here, this is 45 degrees. So this, and that's 0, and that's 90. So when you're using this, you're only going to want to use values between probably 0 and 90, probably Probably between 10 and 80 actually. But when it does this, like if you have a cliff in Minecraft that's got a cliff face in it that goes up very steeply like this, that's greater than 45 degrees, see? Which means that the granite brush we use is only going to apply to these blocks. It won't apply to the flat ones. Does that make sense? So I will undo what we just did and click below 45 degrees. Rake the brush over the whole island again. And we can see now all the low-lying areas have now turned to granite and the grass is only on the mountains. That's not what we want. So we want to undo that. Select above 45 degrees again. We also want to change our brush to be at or above. Let me see, at or above probably what? 70, where we want our mountains to start. And another feature of this, you can apply this to be only on a certain terrain. If you click this only on button here, and it'll give you this menu. And we want to select grass because that's the terrain we're using right now. And when we're selecting grass, that means it will only paint on that, which this feature allows you to paint one layer over another one. And this is going to be key to doing our snow layer in a minute here. So we will rake that over our mountains here. So everything above 45 degrees is now a granite mountain. And you will notice on the tops of these mountains, we have some grass patches that have been left over. I think some of these, we could probably change some of these mountains to 55 instead of 45. Just to show you how that looks. See, if we change it to 55, it leaves more grass on the lower levels like this. And you're going to want to use the same custom terrain to make your snow. The one I've already made. Icy snow here. And we will have this only apply on grass. I'll just rake this across the I remove the degree selection down here and I rake this across like that. We will now see we have snow draped over all the portions that were grass, but the snow comes down way too far. We want to have a nice snow line at a higher altitude. And to do that, we will move the at or above up here to at least 100. And you can just play around with this and add snow here and there and see how it looks. See, there we go. Now all the grass that was on top of our mountains has now had the terrain changed to snow, but it has left the granite, the mountain terrain that we selected before because we had the only on grass setting selected down here. And it also has an accept on feature that you can use if you want to have it accept on a terrain that you've used before. Which means that it won't paint on that terrain. And what else is there to show you? I think probably you would benefit from me talking about the layers for a moment. Custom layers is this tab over here. And this is going to let you set down various areas. Let's just select pine here. And this is going to have Minecraft populate a pine forest, if we just rake it around over here, we will have pine everywhere around here. But that's too much. We don't want it on the water. We have it set to go only on the grass. So now we want to have it generate except on water. So the brush, now as you can see, is only on the grass and not anywhere else. And this also gives you a rough 3D view. It doesn't actually generate the trees for you to look at. You don't do that until you get the map made. But for that, never use the trees at 100% intensity. You want to use it at 30 or below. I think we'll go around to 15. We'll change our brush here, and we'll just lightly click around the edges here to set down some trees, like so. Now with the layers here, you can also add a custom layer. It's the same procedure. Click on the crosshairs, and I don't think I can demonstrate this exactly. This requires you to know how to use MC Edit to create these objects to add into the game. Because when you click on that, it will come up with this window, and it will want you to select some objects. And you do that, you have to select these from a folder that you made on your computer. And to get the objects to put into it requires probably another hour and a whole separate video for me to show you how to do that on MC Edit. But after you do that, this is how you get custom trees to generate onto your maps. Like these are just going to be default Minecraft trees. But if you want to have a whole forest full of custom trees that you don't have to place yourself, you're going to want to learn how to use the custom object layer, like I just showed you. Let's see what's left. There's now the biomes. This will automatically generate biomes if you don't do anything to it. I think if we go on the info tab and start moving our cursor around, we will see that the biome will change from plains to forest to, what is it? Ocean and deep ocean as you go around, but you can also paint biomes directly yourself. And we can paint in a jungle biome here. But we only want that to be on grass. So we will rake it around like that. And this area will be a jungle biome. And if you select another one like a Badlands, that's a mesa biome, and rake it around, it will make this area a mesa biome. The color, it will make it the coloring a mesa biome. It won't actually generate the clay. But there is a built-in mesa thing that we can use. I can show you up here on this disused area. Rake that around like that. And check this over here, and we've got a pre-built mesa area over there. So I think that covers most of the high points. Questions? Anyone in chat that's been watching has questions before we make the map, and we'll look at it in Minecraft to see what we've done. I think I'll have to wait on the chat to update for that. don't see any questions. So I will show you how to render this, and we will take a look at this in Minecraft, which means we go up here to File. We want to export this as a new map. And we will call it, what? Dream World 1. And this this page gives you a whole bunch of options. And for the purposes of making the terrain, none of these really matter. It should export everything. I'll have all those turned on. And so I can get around in it. We want to set this to a creative world. And I will have the border generate as an endless void. And these are mostly settings that you'll have to play around with and see which ones you like. The definite settings that you want to keep are things like keep steep terrain covered. You definitely want that one on. And also, if you've added custom layers, you want to make sure all those are selected over here. So we will hit an export on that. Wait for it to build the world. The larger your world is, the longer this is going to take. And we can load up Minecraft or Minecraft and take a look at what we've done inside of the game. Because this is another thing you're going to want to do. Even though it gives you a 3D window preview, as you build your world, you're definitely going to want to add in-process things that you've been building so you can just pop in the game and see what it's actually going to look like. And since it's the first time this world's been made, it's going to take a minute to do that. And here we are. It's put us on the other side of this island over here. So there are the trees that we put down earlier. There's the jungle that we put down earlier. And we have our mountains. And we've got the sand by the water down here. And we have our snow, and we have our snow-capped mountains up on the peaks here. And let's take a look at the transition layers and everything. Down here we can see we've got where we don't have a hard edge where the sand meets the grass, we have cobble and various things sticking around there. And you can also modify the beach to have more gravel on it if you want to. And we have our little island that we made off over here. Doesn't look too bad. There's our little lake down there. So, I believe that covers everything I can think of. So, if you have any questions or anything that we've done so far, let me know. Yes, Anders, all of this was done in the World Painting program. We built this world with Worldpainter, and we've now rendered it out to take a look at it in the game. This is how I built my Noreth map. And this is definitely the tool you should use if you want to make custom terrains or anything. Looks like we've had an ocean monument generate down there. That's odd. So I think we've gone on for a little bit over an hour. If anyone has any questions, let me know and I can answer them on the stream, or if you think of them later, I will answer them in the comments below the video. Okay, well, I don't see any questions, so I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope this helps you figure out how to use Worldpainter. And if you have any questions, I will try and answer them in the comments. But thank you for coming, and I will see you later.